Hi. Um, it's kind of uncanny that the last video I posted was about performance management. Typically in a strictly in a professional context, okay, how do you measure performance in an office setting? As luck would have it, I suddenly chanced upon a book, and I didn't even know that the book was there in my house for such a long time. The name of the book is How Would You Measure Your Life? And this is written by a very well known thinker and author. His name is Clayton Christensen. Unfortunately, he's no more. 2020 is when he passed away. He's a very accomplished thinker. In fact, he has earlier written an extremely popular bestseller book called The Innovator's Dilemma. And Clayton Christensen was a very respected professor in the Harvard Business School. In fact, he was an MBA graduate of Harvard as well. He was an alumnus, and then he went on to have a professional career. Then he was an entrepreneur, and then finally, in his 40s, he became a professor, an academic. Uh, so yeah, he's a very interesting person and very accomplished. So I chanced upon this book, and it was a beautiful amalgamation of how you can measure your business as well as your life using certain commonalities. Uh, you know, Generally people make this mistake that he pointed out. He said, "Okay, when I passed out with my fellow batchmates from Harvard, all of them were very excited. They wanted to do something purposeful. A lot of people wanted to, follow their heart, maybe, do something for a social cause or do entrepreneurship. Uh, but there was this typical conversation that, I just need to kind of get this education loan off my back, just need to get a good house for my parents and myself, and that's it. Another 3 4 years post college, I should be able to follow my dream. Now that's the first pitfall that he points to, looking short term, which is something that we do in an office setting, also in a professional setting, and also in the personal setting, and then putting off things which we really want to do, thinking that we will have the time, the perfect moment, the perfect resources to pursue that. And that's the first revelation that the book provides. And imagine, हमें तो लगता है कि ये सिर्फ हमें होता है. We are talking about people who passed out of pretty much the most coveted educational institution, which is the Harvard Business School, also looking for secure short-term success. The next thing, दूसरी चीज जो ये book कहती है कि we as human beings, we want tangible evidence of success, and that's why we look for short-term gratification. And he pointed out that after 4 years or 5 years of alumni meet, most people were pretty much similar in their life trajectory, personal, professional. By the time the 10th alumni meet came, some people were in their second marriage, some people were in their third marriage, some people were extremely lonely, couldn't even find a partner, some people had health issues. In fact, one or two kind of got convicted because of fraudulent activities. In fact, he mentioned, if you remember, there was a huge Enron scam, and the CEO of Enron at that time, in fact, was one of his Harvard batchmates, unfortunately. So, we'll come to that later, how kind of people compromise integrity. But, what he talks about is, as you look to get these material successes, देखिए ऑफिस में बड़ा टेंजिबल है ना कि आपको साल के एंड में एक इंक्रीमेंट मिलता है. You get an increment, 10% increment. आपको शादी के एक साल में कोई इंक्रीमेंट मिलता है क्या? नहीं मिलता ना. बच्चा पैदा होने के एक साल में कोई इंक्रीमेंट मिलता है? नहीं मिलता. So what we do, we typically put our focus on tangible results, and unknowingly we keep ignoring the maybe the more important areas of our life. And as happens, family doesn't really demand your time as much. Your boss will call you for a call on the weekend, or a meeting on the weekend, will demand time, will be loud in terms of demanding your commitment. But family is always compromising. Wife is compromising. Husband is compromising. Children obviously are too young. It's easy for you to, not listen to them. But as life goes on, 5 7 10 years of this lifestyle takes a toll on your core areas of life, which is marriage, relationships, friendship, parenting. And suddenly you realize that you don't have the marriage that you really wanted. You don't have the connect with your parents that you really wanted. You don't have the connect that you want with your children that you wanted. You haven't spoken to your closest friends from school and college for many many years, and you've lost track of them. And having this lopsided view of success is what gets you to be emotionally and personally really poor, and at certain levels really bankrupt by the time you reach 30s and 40s of your life. तो ये बड़ा रिवीलिंग इंसाइट था how people make this mistake of over investing in one area of life because those are tangible results. And then also putting up what you want to do, putting up what you want to do, putting off what you want to do rather. कि बाद में करेंगे जब टाइम आएगा करेंगे अभी बाद नहीं कर सकते and then when you reach your 30s and 40s you are hit by midlife crisis. आपको लगता है यार आधी जिंदगी तो चली गई अब पता नहीं मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ. Money might not be a problem at that point, but you have this sense of hollowness about what you really wanted to do and what you are doing. So this is how the issues show up. So what he talks about is how you can put some rituals, some non-negotiables in place about key areas of your life. So one thing that he talks about is, whatever happened, he ensured that post 6 o'clock he left work and he played with his kids for at least an hour. Okay. Then he also makes, he kind of mentions about another person who created a 15-minute game because that's all the time that he had to play with his kids. And he had promised to himself that every day he'll play with his kids. And those 15-minute games kind of became a rage at one point in time in the US. So that's on balancing important areas of life. The second thing that he talks about is how do you find the purpose of your life? Purpose keeps changing. That's the first thing that he says. ऐसा नहीं कि आपने अगर I can tell you from my example, I did hospitality management. At one point in time, I was very clear that I wanted to be a hospitality professional only. I wanted to work in hotels, resorts, this, that. But the moment I joined the industry, I didn't like it, and I kind of did not think much. But the fact that I didn't like it, I switched industries, and the best possible option at that time was joining the outsourcing industry, which was booming, and that's what I did. And he talks about this. He talks about deliberate strategy and emergent strategy. तो डिलिबरेट स्ट्रेटजी मेरा था कि मैं हॉस्पिटैलिटी मैनेजमेंट करूंगा और हॉस्पिटैलिटी प्रोफेशनल बनूंगा. बट देन once that did not work, I kind of chanced upon the outsourcing industry and started enjoying it and started getting some success. And then emergent strategy can be embraced as your deliberate strategy. He gives a great example of how Honda became such a popular motorcycle brand in the US. When Honda started their business in the US, they were trying to compete with the likes of Harley Davidson, which was like the really big bikes. So once they put that product in the market, see in US these bikes used to go for very long distance rides, 500 kilometers, 600 kilometers, which is very unlike what riders in Japan used to do. Now these bikes started having issues. There were oil leakages, this, that. So quality issues hone lage. Each time that will happen is when these bikes had to be kind of sent back to the factory in Japan. They had to be repaired. So there was a lot of cost. So the US business was bleeding. At the same time, the Honda employees in the US were using a lighter bike, a Honda bike, that was only for their professional requirements, 2 kilometer jana hai, 5 kilometer jana hai, and they were called the Cubs. Now, out of frustration, one day, one of the Honda employees just took the Cub bike into the mountains and just kind of did off-roading, and then he shared it with his staff, his colleagues, and all of them went off-roading. And then some of the people saw it. And that gave rise to what we today know as dirt biking. And Honda's Cub product, which was the emergent strategy, which kind of emerged, as a success. Then Honda management was very smart to not pursue the deliberate strategy and then embrace this emergent strategy as your new deliberate strategy. Okay, so that's what he talks about, that purpose keeps changing. Now, it doesn't mean, don't confuse purpose with dopamine rush. कि मैं आज ये कर लेता हूँ 3 महीने बाद कुछ और कर लेता हूँ तो मेरा तो पर्पस हर 3 महीने में चेंज हो रहा है. Purpose can change, but I think if you really know what is purpose, you will give it about 10 years of your life. Okay, so anything less than that is not purpose. This is fleeting distractions. So you need to be mindful of that. But this is what it is. Organizations can remain nimble. He in fact gives another example of how organizations who are not nimble, who do not look at emergent strategies. In fact, he gives a comparison between Netflix and Blockbuster. Blockbuster was in the business of renting out DVDs. And then Netflix came in. Netflix used to courier those DVDs. And Blockbuster used to make money when people used to hold on to the DVDs. Okay, कि 5 दिन 6 दिन 40 दिन हो गया तो उस पे पैसे बनाते थे. But they didn't see that is going to change, and technology is going to be disrupting the space, which is what Netflix did. And these guys did not invest in a new emergent strategy, thinking कि यार ये जो business चल रहा है इससे पैसे निकाल के उसमें करेंगे तो इसका business कम हो जाएगा. And they thought that self cannibalization is what is going to happen. And now that Netflix is one of the most valuable companies, and Blockbuster is a thing of the past. I think in the early 2010s, they filed for bankruptcy. So, which is what happened. When an emergent strategy emerges, embrace it for life as well as business. So that was, I think, a very extremely kind of valuable insight. And as you go along, read the book. He also makes a beautiful point about integrity, and he says that if you compromise on your integrity once, it's a slippery slope. If you give yourself that allowance that, okay, this one extenuating circumstance is when I'm compromising on my integrity, he says that's the start of your downfall. That's how people end up in scams, in frauds, like what happened to the Enron CEO. Closer home, we have more examples of very senior corporate leaders, very educated, very erudite, very successful, but they just embarked on that slippery slope of saying, चलो एक बार कर लेते ना, इस बार कर लेते। वो इस बार की जो शुरुआत होती है, that doesn't stop. Okay, you have to keep lying and lying and lying and lying, and then before you know, it has become bigger than you. So he says, that's why nip it in the bud. Don't even try it once. He gives a great example of how when he was in Harvard, he had made a promise to himself. He was a very religious person, and he had his dedication to his church. And there's a church scripture that he had promised that he will read 1 hour every day. So it was a choice between him reading one more case study paper or reading for 1 hour the religious scriptures, and he just kept doing that. In fact, he also gave an example of how he had made a promise to God that every Sunday he will go to the church. And there was one Sunday when he was a basketball player, a very successful basketball player. One Sunday when his team needed him for the finals, but he stood his ground. He apologized. In fact, he didn't even apologize. He informed his coach that this is the promise that I've made to the church and my God, and I will keep it. And he prayed for his team, and in fact, as luck would have it, his team won. So everything can work out. And the whole point is, कोई one extenuating circumstance का excuse देके मत कीजिए compromise, because like he says, life is a series of one extenuating circumstances. So don't give this excuse to yourself to compromise on your integrity. I think it was a great book. I would definitely recommend our viewers to read it. I'll repeat the name again. How Would You Measure Your Life by Clayton Christensen. That's it for today. I hope it was a useful video. Thank you.